Morning. I have my phone here. You see there's a clock on it. That is to try to keep me on track, but there are no guarantees. As Sean mentioned, my name is Bryan Smith, and I have the privilege to serve at Lebanon County Christian Ministries. Lebanon County Christian Ministries. I've been called a lot of things in my life, but Lancaster isn't one of them. But it is now, I guess, right? Thanks for just letting me come and share with you this morning. I couldn't help but notice that Mike had put a picture up of my wife and I. The only thing good about that was that my beautiful wife was in it. Me wearing a suit anymore is the last thing that I prefer to do. Spent a lot of my life in a uniform or a suit, and one of the things that I love about the ministry at LCCM is I get to wear sweatshirts, t-shirts, and go comfy to my office on a regular basis. That happened to be, though, last summer at my daughter's wedding. Apparently, when you're walking her down the aisle, you're supposed to put a suit on. At least that's what she told me. And as I'm going to share here in a little bit, when moms tell you to do something, you listen, right? So I want to dig into my story a little bit. This lead-in video is from Chick-fil-A. Who enjoys a little Chick-fil-A on occasion? Certainly never on a Sunday because they're closed to enjoy the Sabbath, right? Chick-fil-A is very open and outward sharing about their Christian background and their faith background, and that is why they're closed on Sunday. But they also have one of the most incredible customer service driven employment orientations that exists, and that video is showed at their orientation, just to remind us all that when we interact with individuals, that everybody behind that facade has a story. So I want to dig into a little bit about Thanksgiving of 2018. It is a time in my career, my life, that I had pretty much hit rock bottom. But I want to share with you that it was my rock bottom. My rock bottom is not your rock bottom. My story is not your story. We each have our own stories, and that's okay. We don't sit around and we try to one-up each other on our stories, but I want to talk today about the power of a comma. How on one side, we've got one thing, and on the back side of that comma, we can have something completely different in our lives. I was a leader. I was at a point in my career where I was running an EMS system. We were embarking on change that not everyone was going to enjoy. Not everyone was going to get behind, but it was change nonetheless that needed to happen. And that change was about to affect lives. I spent 25 years as a paramedic here in Lebanon and ran the EMS system for about 12 of those years. There were people that I was about to change their life that were friends of mine. And what was really interesting was that as we went through that change, money became the thing that drove so many of the decisions and so much of what ended up being my story to hit rock bottom. I don't think that it's a secret that money dominates too much in our broken world. I was a few years into my faith journey. I had grown up in the church. I grew up in a church. I had walked away from that church, but my wife and I had found ourselves re-engaging into a new faith journey, a new faith walk. That's important because that Friday of the Thanksgiving of 2018 was a comma moment for me. I was at home and I was going to go outside and do some leaf blowing. Backpack leaf blower, earbuds, some Christian music, and about 4 hours of leaf blowing where I was about to just disconnect. I didn't realize that period of time was a period of time that I was about to be the student and he was about to be the teacher. But we say it over and over again. His time is always perfect, right? He knows when we need something before we know it. So I'll talk a little bit about a comma. A comma is a simple little mark that's found in books that you read and papers that you read. It's on all of our cell phones, this little button, this little mark. It's on our computer keyboards. But let's dive into a comma and the value of an intentional pause. So Webster defines a comma as a punctuation mark used especially as a mark separation within a sentence. It's a pause. It's an interval. Where else do we find pause and interval in our life? Well, we can find it in our lives. We can find it in our songs. We can find it in the Bible. The short story that I opened up with about my story, there were many commas within that. So here's just a snapshot of those. I grew up attending church, comma. I walked away from that church. I was a paramedic, comma. I was a director and the chief. Two different things. The organization was doing things in one way. There was a comma. We were about to change them and do them a different way. And then the one that I sought out to just do some leaf blowing on a Friday, comma, he sought out to teach me. So I want you just to think as we go through this, what are some comma moments that are in your life? As I was digging into putting this message together, I could not believe the number of moments that I went, oh, that was a comma moment. That was a comma moment. Moments that had some intentional pause to make me just stop what I was doing and realize on the other side of this action there was going to be something else. The word Selah. Selah. See, the word Selah really doesn't have a definition. It's more of a translation. But it's a word that we can take comfort in. See, Selah is found in the book of Psalms. Depending on what translation of the Bible that you're reading, the word may actually be printed in there in the Psalms, and you'll see Selah. You may also have a translation of your Bible that the word Selah is replaced with interlude. So our musical friends will know that an interlude is the music between verses. An interlude breaks up the verses and it creates an impact. So for fun, we're going to take a little look at what that little comma, a Selah, that pause will do for us. Here's two short sentences that I want you to take a look at. One is, let's eat, Gigi. You know, Gigi, grandma. Or, let's eat Gigi. Simple little mark has very different meaning because we don't want to eat grandma, but we may want to eat with grandma, right? So in Psalms, Psalm 3 says, or Psalm 3, Save me, O God, a Psalm of David. We find a Selah between verses 3 and 4, and I'll read through this. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. Insert Selah, an intentional pause. Then it goes on in verse 3 to say, but you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. The Selah helps set us up, right? We're set up in verses 1 and 2, and then there's this pause, an intentional pause, so that on the back side of that, we can recognize our confidence in God. How many folks can relate to that verse? There's a pause, but he answers us from his holy hill. Where is your defining comma moment? We're coming out of this Easter season, right? An Easter season where we have sorrow. We were filled with anticipation. There was denial, betrayal, and it all culminated with the resurrection. Are there some common moments within that? Jesus is teaching, he's building a kingdom. comma, he is crucified. Jesus is sharing that he's leaving with his disciples, and then he starts washing their feet. Simon Peter's eating the last meal with him, and then he's denying that he even knows who he is. Judas is following Jesus, comma, now he's betraying him for something that was just immediate gratification. Jesus is crucified, dead, and buried, comma, he's alive. Do you remember the moment that Jesus called you? Do you remember that moment? I do. I know that there are folks out there that remember that moment when they were 5, when they were 6, when they were 7. You know, I grew up checking the boxes in the church, but I never grew up having a relationship with Jesus Christ. I remember the day that he really tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Follow me." It was also the day that I was like, I need to be baptized. See, the church that I grew up in, we got baptized as infants. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong about that. I'm just saying that when you decide that you're going to be a follower of Jesus Christ, baptism brings on a whole nother meaning. And I tell you that from a personal choice. So when he tapped me on the shoulder, I knew it was time that I needed to reaffirm my love of Jesus. That baptism moment. We got to do baptism at my mom's home in her swimming pool. And it was a moment and it was a time that I will just not ever forget. See, my home church, we get these black shirts that say "I have decided" on them, and that's our baptism shirt. Well, most of our baptisms in our church take place inside of the church on a stage where you walk across the stage and you're submerged. Well, this was the dead of summer, outside at 10:15 on a Sunday morning, on the concrete surrounding my mom's pool. And I was 15, not 15 years old. I was the 15th person to be baptized that morning. Remember I said it was a black shirt outside. And I remember that day, it was hot. It was so hot. The sweat was literally just dripping down my face. If that shirt would have been white, it would have been stuck to my chest and see-through. And I was burning. And we proceeded through each baptism. And I finally got the moment where I walked up to the steps and I started stepping into the pool as the water went up to my waist. And I began to think, this feels pretty good. But up here, the heat was still pumping. My pastor baptized me at that moment and submerged me into the water. And I came up, completely refreshed, completely renewed. I really feel like it was like God was showing me on the front end, this is what it's like if you want to go burn in hell. But if you follow me, if you have this common moment in your life, I will be there for you. I will refresh you. I will renew you. You will be cooled. And at that moment, everything that I had was laid at his feet. So Jesus did miracles, right? These miracles can't happen if there's not a common moment. There has to be something on the front and something on the back. So we're going to head to John 2, verse 3. It's a wedding at Cana. And I'm not telling you stories you've never heard before, right? But let's look at them maybe a little different way. Verse 3, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Verse 7. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it out. When the master of the feast tasted the water had now become wine, and he did not know where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed him. See, Jesus says, "My hour has not yet come." He's not ready to make his miracles public, right? But mom told him it was time. Because we do what our mommies say, right? See, there was wine, comma, it was all. Well, that was Pennsylvania Dutch, wasn't it? Woo! Sorry about that. It was gone, right? I'm a Lebanon County boy. See, there was water, comma, Jesus turned it to wine. The miracle creates this intentional pause for us. And as we finish in verse 11, it ends with, "And his disciples believed in him." We'll go to the next one in John 4, where Jesus heals the son of an official. Verse 46, "So he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And at Capernaum, there was an official whose son was ill. When this man heard that Jesus had come from Judah to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at this point of death. So Jesus said to him, 'Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe.' The official said to him, 'Sir, come down before my child dies.' And Jesus said to him, 'Go, your son will live.' The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way." Verse 51, "As he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better, and they said to him, 'Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him.' The father knew that that was the hour when Jesus said to him, 'Your son will live.' And he himself believed, and all his household." This was now the second sign that Jesus did when he had come from Judah to Galilee. See, the boy was sick, comma, he wasn't. But the father believed, comma, and all his household. The father's a leader, right? Our men are called to serve and lead our families. You know, the data shows that when dads show up at church, families show up at church. So in Luke 6, we talk about the man with the withered hand. On another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether that he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they might find a reason to accuse him. But he knew their thoughts, and he said to the man with the withered hand, 'Come and stand here.' And he rose and he stood there. And Jesus said to them, 'I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to destroy it?' And after looking around at them, he said to him, 'Stretch out your hand.' And he did so, and his hand was restored. But they were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. This man's hand was withered, comma, it wasn't. It was a Sabbath. But Jesus healed anyway. Where are the comma moments in your life? In my career, the daily battles that I faced in the emergency services field were absolutely taking a toll on me and my relationships. I'm going to stop clearing my throat in your ear. These outside factors were really taking a toll on me and the relationship with the people around me. I had been preaching not this kind of preaching, at New Hire Orientation with my team about the importance of balance in your life. See, it's a three-legged stool. This one's got four, so I won't use it. It's a three-legged stool. Leg one represents your relationship with Jesus Christ. Leg two represents your relationship with your family. And leg three represents your relationship with your work. And there's a balance that goes in, or that stool will become unbalanced. I believe these words still today, comma, I didn't recognize then that they were out of balance. That was when my career comma happened. This comma was an intentional pause, and it led me to Lebanon County Christian Ministries. Through him seeking me, him showing up, he created the intentional pause in my life that I needed to go from being that paramedic, EMS chief, pause, to leading a ministry. His leadership in my life is what restored my three-legged stool back to its balance. All of that occurred on that Friday while leaf blowing when I didn't expect him to show up. I didn't know what he was doing, but he was changing my heart. I want to shift into the Lord's Prayer. It's a prayer that we all have prayed. We know it by heart. But do we often pause and really dig into the meaning? That's a whole nother sermon series, right? But I just want to reflect on this Matthew 6, 5 through 15. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pray then like this. I'm going to pause for 1 second. If we read the Lord's Prayer without intentional pause and paying attention to the commas, it loses its meaning. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive others that trespass, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. These commas create intentional pause, a time for reflection, and a time for desperation. When you're feeling like you are in despair, just pause. This morning when I was on my way here, I like music, and let me just share this with you. When I get the chance to kind of go out and be guests in churches across the county. My home church, man, I roll in that morning. I'm part of our security. I got my badge on. I got my radio, right? Like I got my seat. Like I'm like, Sean, which seat can I sit in? Because I don't want to sit in somebody's seat, right? And I roll in and I'm very comfortable. When I go places that I don't know, I don't know many of the people there. I'm not nervous about delivering the message. I'm nervous like I'm gonna like trip, like say something stupid, and I need my moments on my way wherever I'm going to really connect with Jesus. I like music, and that's where I go. Um, our Lebanon campus pastor of my church happens to have recordings, and I went to his playlist and I just hit shuffle, and the first song that popped up was "Run to the Father." So man, it's a little cloudy out, so my voice was just going to stay inside of my car. Nobody's going to listen, and I was singing along with them on the way here. But then I was like, wait, what were those words saying? Because sometimes we forget to actually listen to the words. So I'm going to read them to you. This was not in my notes. This is the part where I get myself in trouble. Run to the Father. I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now. I'm laying it down because I know that I need you. Anybody here ever try to control their life? Yeah. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, but my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, your price for my heart. I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, but my soul needs a friend. This desperation piece, and as I come to a close, I want to talk about this desperation, this intentional pause. Throughout our Bibles, we find that there are many names for God. I've got my favorite one, Abba Father. It's the one I seem to go to in like my prayer. Not prayer with others, but my personal prayer. See, Abba means father in the Aramaic language. So Abba Father is Father Father. So then I got thinking, well, hold on a second. Dad, Dad, Mom, Mom. What? I've been typing this up. Microsoft Word's like, hello, you just said the same thing twice, right? But I remember the moment when it really hit me that it's about intentional pause. It's about desperation. I was in our men's Bible study, and I got to tell you, I have no idea what our Bible study was that night. But I'm sitting there, and I'm just reading through things, and I think what I ended up doing was I completely got distracted and went down this path on my own, and I started digging deeper and deeper into Abba Father, and that's when it hit me. It's about desperation. It's when I put a comma between Abba and Father. So as I was preparing for this, I was sharing with Pastor Carey. He's our district superintendent of our Philadelphia district for the Church in the Nazarene, which is where I go to church. And I said, Pastor Carey, I'm going to be sharing this message, and I'm going to talk about a comma, Sila. That's what he said to me. And if you didn't know, Pastor Carey is just beautiful, beautiful, humble man. Sila. He says, Bryan, I was in Jerusalem. I was walking the streets, and I heard this, Abba, 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 Abba. And he said, I turned, and there was a young man up on the wall who had lost his dad. And he was yelling out, Abba, 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 Abba. Desperation. Where's my daddy? Where's my daddy? So when you're in desperation mode, when you're at your rock bottom, when things are tough, put the comma in your life. Just pause. Intentionally pause. Maybe cry out, Abba, Father. Abba, Father. Daddy. Daddy. When we get lost, when you get lost, just seek him. He knows what you need, and he's just waiting for you. He wants you to seek him. Put the comma in your life and call out, Daddy, Daddy.